Alright guys, so in this video I played Days Gone in 2023 for the first time, and I'll be giving an overall review and my thoughts on the game to let you know if it does still hold up 4 years after releasing back in 2019. If you go on to enjoy or find this video helpful, then tap that like button down below, and if story video games are your thing, then maybe consider subscribing to the channel. I have various reviews on a selection of games, and a playlist of a series will be in the description down below. Now let's jump into Days Gone. Starting off with the story with minor spoilers, the game is set in Oregon and a couple years after a pandemic that turned almost everyone into zombie-like creatures known as freakers, acting like a zombie would by having the constant urge to eat everyone and everything in the world, meaning that it doesn't follow the usual way of getting infected by usually a bite and then turning into one of them. They basically just aggressively kill people in this game. The main protagonist of Deacon St. John is of course who you play as throughout the whole game, alongside his biker friend the Boozer, who travel through the post-apocalyptic world and try to survive whilst on the main mission to find Deke's missing wife Sarah, who were separated on the day the world went crazy and the outbreak first started. There is a small opening which you'll see and I won't talk more about. So they have an idea of where she's located but still aren't sure if she's alive or not due to the outbreak and a vast amount of freakers in that area. As you progress through the story, it dives into other topics like conspiracy theories of the whole outbreak, Deke's mental problems, as well as meeting other characters that will help you. Now due to the outbreak, most of the governments have stopped, but not all of them. Deke gains more information and understanding from Nero, an agency that responds to emergencies in the US and failed to stop the major virus. The members are all heavily armoured and equipped with weapons where they'll shoot anyone in sight, that being a freaker or a human. The overall journey follows a theme of redemption as you try to find Deke's purpose and focus on his mission, whilst putting his past behind him. As you meet these ally characters, they open up to Deke about their own problems and overall change his mindset and understanding of this broken world and why he's there. The game includes various flashbacks to show who Deke was once like and his relationship with Sarah when he was a lot younger. He's around 40 years old, 2 years after the outbreak, and Boozer's past had quite a rough road. His wife died in a motorbike crash, leaving Boozer in a really bad mental place. Deke and Boozer have a very strong bond and close friendship throughout the whole game, which is presented quite clearly in many moments which I won't spoil. They both camp out in the wilderness and scout the surrounding areas at the start for potential threats, like freakers as well as other cults known as Whippers, who you meet throughout the whole game and try to attack and take down both Deke and Boozer, meaning they'll always have to move forward not only from these threats but also to find Sarah. At the start, Deke is pretty certain that Sarah is dead from the freakers taking over the encampment site she's at, and really sees no interest in moving forward because she's gone, and you see his mindset change throughout. From characters and clues, there's lots of moments in the game that provide Deke with a chance that Sarah is actually still alive, meaning that Deke strives even more as you play through. The Whippers and the freakers create problems throughout the whole journey very early on, for example, where the Whippers violently attack Boozer and Deke has to go out and find medicine to heal his wound, meaning that it's obviously not just traversing through the world to one location, as it will shift focus when there's a problem or encounter with another character, etc. These interactions will most likely be with different factions that are present throughout the whole game, with their own camp that you can visit, which I'll talk more about in gameplay later on. These main encampments are Copeland's, Hot Springs, Iron Mike, and Wizard Island. The main leaders go by Mark Copeland, a conspiracy theorist who despises the government for obvious reasons, who will provide Deke with jobs like the rest. Ada Tucker, who employs Deke to supply new workers and track anyone down that escapes the forced labour camp. Iron Mike, or Michael Wilcox, who cares a lot about his camp. He's thankful to Deke about saving his camp members, but doesn't always like the way he tackles bounty hunting jobs. Lastly, there's Colonel Garrett, who's very obsessed with the idea that the world's going to end and the theories around it, similar to Copeland, but tends to be more serious and giving ideas on planning to survive this event. So the side characters do add quite a lot and shift the focus of the story as you traverse through the main journey of finding Sarah, as well as the strong connection with Boozer, who he has to look after and help him survive due to the injury he's gained from the Whippers. Of course, if Boozer dies, then Deke is alone, and the story tries to show Deke's personal struggle of what he believes life is about and for when he's gone through so much pain. The reason I say they try is because it tends to focus a lot more on the missions you are given by the encampment leaders, Tucker, Mike, etc., who, although they are the leaders of the camp, Deke doesn't have a strong bond with them that means something. Overall, they're quite basic, but you have to run through these tasks to move on and unlock other missions in the story that will make Deke closer to finding Sarah with the information he gains from the Nero group, more specifically O'Brien, who's the one that was with Sarah when she was separated from Deke, meaning that the story still does really focus on becoming a little closer to finding Sarah. And although I knew Deke was trying trying to find at the start. It's incredibly repetitive and lazy from the writers to go down this route with it, where you spend the majority of the game undergoing these repetitive small orders from these basic characters to progress. There are small choices for you to decide in the game that don't change anything for the rest of the story, so although it was cool to implement, it wasn't anything groundbreaking for the narrative, and it does focus a lot on coincidences and very specific convenient moments for Sarah's survival that don't really immerse you into the story, especially when it takes so much time for these coincidences to be realised. And overall, there's very minuscule bits of information about Sarah's survival throughout the whole game, while she performs so many ongoing tasks that didn't need to take nowhere near the amount of time they actually took, meaning it really drags on and doesn't go anywhere until way too late into the game, and does leave you a bit disappointed in many areas at the start because of the way they did it. That isn't to say it never takes off, as it definitely does at a certain moment that stays like it for pretty much the rest of the game, which was a relief. It just shouldn't have taken that much time to. And now we move on to the gameplay of Days Gone. First off, the visuals look amazing, filled with so many dense forests of fir and evergreen trees, with the weather changing as you ride through on your motorbike, with many areas filled with thick fog and haze, emphasising that haunting feel of the apocalyptic world. Of course, you can alter the graphic and display settings on PC, and the game still looks great with low settings, and the performance definitely holds up a lot better than it did on launch, and that's with high settings. This is from FPS to bugs, where I didn't experience any drops in my playthrough on high graphics. The foliage and other objects rendering well even when the rendering is toned down. The same with view distance. The colossal mountains in the background all around you look incredible, and similar to Far Cry 5 and The Last of Us. I've always said that these type of settings like Jackson, Montana, Wyoming and Oregon in this case, that they're all just mountainous and filled with just natural beauty. It's the same in Days Gone, and there's really no complaints on the setting they based it on. Speaking on the weather, like I mentioned, the dense foggy areas, especially at night, are great. It also rains and even snows a lot. Even Deke mentions it a few times because of how excessive it is. This dynamic weather system just adds to that atmosphere and engagement of the game's world. Another aspect that really brought out that peaceful yet haunting atmosphere is how calm it becomes when riding your bike or walking, and then hearing the sounds of footsteps on different terrain, a light breeze, the peaceful sound of the rain hitting on the ground. So many small details in sound design, and then similar to The Last of Us, something that instantly alters the mood is when you suddenly hear a faint freaker screech in the far distance. It just tops it off, and I love it. As we're on the topic of exploring the world, the bike, which you definitely use a lot throughout the game, is very fun and smooth to drive, but not too easy to the point where it doesn't feel like you're actually doing much to control the bike, although that may be less of a challenge to drive. I'm glad that in this game the bike has traction to it, and it does give off the feeling of forcing the handles to right or left when you turn, and doesn't turn so directly and quickly like most games. Though saying that, it doesn't mean it's always slow when you want to speed off-road at a very fast pace, for example, and want to quickly change direction. You can easily drift a bike, which was a lot of fun, but of course still does feel like it has weight to it like usual. It's just so immersive when driving, especially due to how winding the roads are in Oregon, and in those deep forest areas that are extremely common of course. Really no complaints on the bike mechanics, and I'm sure you'll find it very satisfying to ride them. The combat of Days Gone is very brutal and aggressive in gunplay and even stealth. What was similar in combat and story was how long the game takes to change the pace of the gameplay as well, with more variety in tools and weapons rather than just your rifle, shotgun and handgun. I expected the combat to branch out over time, though I didn't think it would take the first third of the game to do so. But this doesn't mean it's underwhelming. When you eventually get to this point, the variety in gameplay and combat makes it much more fun and less repetitive, and was one of my favourite parts, especially due to the giant hordes of freakers that you encounter as you progress. It can be very tiring to take them down without any craftable weapons and different items. The freakers do come in many different enemy types. Swarmers, the most common and basic variation that take up most of the horde population. Bleachers, a slightly stronger version of the swarmer but very similar in their attacking style. Newts, they only attack when Deke is low on health or if he really becomes really close to them. Screamers, they only stun Deke and wake up and alert other hordes by screaming, meaning that they'll attract more freakers. Breakers, they can easily break through military armor and are very strong, as in how much they can take. And the Reachers, who are more evolved, they're a lot faster than Swarmers and stronger and smarter. The hordes of freakers can vary in size, and the larger honestly is the better because it's so fun to take them down with only you by yourself and your different weapons, so it adds to that challenge because you're so outnumbered. As I said, it does take a little while to start using more of a selection in throwables. Eventually there's so many to choose from and craft on the go instead of going to a crafting station, for example. You can literally craft them in your hands mid-battle if you have the resources, weapons, which is very helpful if you run low. There's the Molotov, Napalm Molotov, Pipe Bomb, Frag Grenade, and then a wide array of traps like the Proximity Mine, Proximity Bomb, and Remote Bomb, all used to blow up a surrounding area to get rid of the majority of the hordes without having to go up close to them. There's also distractions like rock throwing, smoke bombs, attractor bombs, flashbangs, which can all be done to stun a freaker or get out of a situation, and all be used together to easily take down a giant horde. So I'm glad there's a lot of experimentation that can be done, so it doesn't become repetitive and requires a bit of thinking in fights. Depending on the difficulty of the game, the resources you craft will of course be more sparse. You can find crafting resources and ammo from car bonnets and boots that you can pry open, and also spread across the ground. You can highlight these items and clues by using survival vision, similar to survival instinct in Tomb Raider, and eagle vision from Assassin's Creed, which is very helpful. By visiting camps, you can turn meat and plants you find from hunting animals and picking wild plants. This will give you credits and trust, which means that the encampment trusts you a lot more. Different items provide different rewards. You can also turn in freaker ears, which are collected through taking down freakers, basically a currency that can be given to bounty collectors for trust and credits, as well as visiting merchants to buy ammo and guns with credits, and the more trust you have, the more selection, buy different suppressors for your gun for different trust levels. You can buy health kits and throwables. The guns you can buy will go straight to your own gun locker, which includes your loadout of a primary, secondary, special and a melee. There's a huge variety of guns that become bigger as you progress, with SMGs, crossbows, LMGs, handguns, shotguns, snipers, flamethrowers, as well as random melees that can be crafted or picked up, like baseball bats, machetes, fire axes, fence posts, sledgehammers, knives, spiked axes, that can all be upgraded through the merchants for better damage, range, etc. Lastly, you can add upgrades to your bike and customize its look with different paint jobs, and better engines to go faster, guards for durability, etc. all unlockable through trust level and credit. And I do believe that's where I wrap up my review of Days Gone in 2023. I do feel like it's had a bit of a bad rep, however since release there's no flaws in performance from what I noticed, or at least nowhere near how bad it was at launch. I know there's lackluster areas in terms of story that I've mentioned, and I do believe that's the biggest and most damaging aspect to why people may lose interest, which makes sense as the story is one of the biggest parts. And as I've said, I do agree that the overall writing and pacing of the story is more slow and lazy than what I hoped for. Overall, the gameplay and combat are up there. I know it may take a while to start branching out, and it should have done it a bit earlier, just like the story. So I'd say for people that give the game their time and patience, they'll love it in the end, I'm sure. But it's just a bad first impression, and for people that want all the content right away and don't enjoy pushing and dragging through the game until it becomes fun, then I would say the game probably won't be for you. That's what I think, and my conclusion today is gone. For someone that's played through the whole entire game and given it my time, in the end and looking back, it's a good game but does have its flaws I've mentioned that made it a bit underwhelming for a good chunk of the game. If you did enjoy this video of Days Gone in 2023, then let me know by tapping that like button down below, and if you enjoy story video games, then maybe consider subscribing to the channel. I have a wide variety of reviews on the channel with a playlist of a random series in the description, and my last video will be on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching until the very end, and bye bye.